really do.
That was perfectly balanced. Well, hello everybody. It's
Monday Night Live.
See, you did that so good today. You did that so good.
You do have a little bit of a rumble today.
A rumble from your travels.
From my Michigan chilliness.
Well, welcome everybody. We are excited to be. We're excited.
We are so excited to be here today.
We're excited to be with you tonight on this Monday Night Live. It has been so interesting. We both just got off the road. You were up in Michigan,
mm-hmm.
and I was down in Chicago. And both of us have come back with this little bit of a cough.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, it was cold out there, wasn't it?
It was. I think it was colder in Chicago for you than it was in Michigan for me.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say that that's okay to me.
I don't know. I was like, some of you saw my Facebook feed, it was like sunny and beautiful, and it's like 9 degrees.
Right, yeah.
Like,
you were in single digits.
What the heck is that about? But
at least it was sunny.
My hat, yes, it was sunny, and my hat is off to all my Chicagites and Michiganites and all those back
everybody
east.
on the East Coast.
Thank you, everybody, for dealing with the cold.
Yes, and shout out to Jamie Leitner for being the best host that side of the Mississippi.
Yeah, she took good care of you.
She really did take great
care of me. I loved it. You guys put out a lot of good content and worked really hard. I love the synergy between the two of you. We've got these two amazing women, and I hope everybody out there is really working hard to tune into them. They are working hard to really lead out in helping women become more empowered. And we need that more in our world right now. We need more women stepping up and stepping to the plate and really lighting the way. I mean, this has been a mission that women have been on for almost a century now.
Right.
It is important. It is still an issue. We've got to start seeing women as the healers, as the leaders, as the advocates, and sources of knowledge and information that they are. So I hope that all of you out there are really tuning into these girls on the Girl I Got You platform.
Yes, and if you're not, find us. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we've got our own little private girl community happening on the Facebook, and thanks, Dean. And I feel like we do put out really good content.
You
as well,
do,
so.
You do, and you guys, you have no idea how much time that they spend on this, and
it's definitely a passion project.
The women's group every Wednesday at
5:30.
I just was so nervous to say it wrong. At 5:30 over here. What a great tribe of women! I get a peek in as I walk by, and super impressed by you girls and what you're doing. So thank you for being so awesome.
Steve. Well, thank you for being so supportive always.
Well, tonight we get to talk about something that is really intriguing to me, which is conflict.
Yes.
And it is so funny how we really resist conflict, and a lot of us have, and I have my theories. Oh,
well, I hope they come out tonight.
Well, they might if we're lucky. But I'm super, super intrigued and super excited to talk about this topic tonight.
I love it. So, by the way, I'm doing this. Get ready.
Okay, do this.
Okay. Dean and I are starting a podcast. It's happening.
It's happening.
We've been talking about it for a hot minute. The trick is scheduling, right? Because we both have, I think, avoidantly stay pretty busy. Just about everything in life.
Yes.
Okay, I'm just going to leave that there. That's a different day.
We'll just park that car sideways in the driveway.
But I love it because oftentimes you and I will start talking about something and we can be disagreeing, right?
Right.
And you're always like, see, this is what we need to get on the podcast.
Conflict.
And so tonight we're going to talk about maybe the unhealthy side of conflict as well as the healthy side of conflict, because it's something that I know people really shy away from. If it's like, oh gosh, I don't want to approach this person in my life with this thing that's troubling me because I don't want to fight about it.
I love that. You said, oh gosh.
Oh gosh.
I can tell you've been in Michigan. Oh gosh. Oh no. Hey.
My Bobby's World mom came out. Don't you know?
Don't you know? It's the Yoopers, eh? All the Michiganites will get it.
Oh.
So yeah, it is. There's healthy and unhealthy.
Right.
And it's really the thing that's so interesting to me about conflict, because this has been something that really been dealing with a lot recently, is really working through conflict. And you know, we talked through the years about the, you know, especially in marriage, you know, what the five conflicts of marriage are going to be: sex, children, finances, family, and oh, good grief, I just blanked.
Video games.
That can be one of them. And money.
You
Did I
said
say
finances.
money? Okay.
Yeah.
I apologize. I'll have to come back to that. But those tend to create a lot of conflict. They really create a lot of conflict around the things that are happening in our lives. And there is healthy conflict. You were talking about that before we got started. And I love that perspective. So share that, and then I want to loop into my theory.
Okay, perfect. Well, I think that conflict is healthy because oftentimes what is in conflict is something that needs a little course correction, right? So okay, let's run with your marriage thing, right? Like you're trucking along in this relationship. I guess it can be any relationship, but we're talking about a marriage. And something happens that's out of alignment with what we feel like is in our lane, in our value system, in whatever with our relationship. We need to have a conversation about that. And it's probably going to be pretty conflicting. We're going to have there might be disagreement. There may be a lot of back and forth that happens. But the healthy piece of it is if you don't talk about it, there's not going to be any sort of a resolution.
Yeah.
So conflict brings in healthy resolution because it allows you to be able to either challenge some ideas or maybe even your own, right? Like have your own perspective and your own world belief challenged and be able to, it gives you an opportunity to kind of check in and course correct.
Yeah. And that is good. That is, I love that you connect that. And in you tied it into marriage, but it is relationship.
It's just any relationship.
Yeah, any relationship. Yeah. And that conflict is so intriguing because healthy conflict really does help us go, okay, we need to come to the table. We need to talk through this. We need to move through this. And that is the healthy side of conflict, because the piece, one of the pieces I want to make sure we talked about tonight is what are really kind of the three creators of conflict. And one of those is perspective.
Absolutely.
And so I love that you bring that up because it really ties into the perspective thing. Because if I'm going through and marching forward in a relationship thinking that I'm moving a certain direction, and I believe that we're on the same page, I believe that whoever I'm moving through that with is on the same page, and then down the road I find out that we're not, and because we haven't had some conflict or because we haven't communicated, which conflict can create is communication, then I find out, you know, after some catastrophe or some outbreak or outburst, that we're not on the same page. And I do see that a lot in relationships where I'll have partners come in and they'll be sitting on the couch and their hand in their head in their hands going, I don't know, I thought we were good, and they moved out. And it's like, well, there were a lot of signs. There had to be a lot of signs coming up to it. But what keeps us from having those conversations?
Right.
What keeps us from having that? And that's because we don't realize that there is healthy conflict and there's unhealthy conflict. But we avoid conflict altogether.
Because we just automatically think that, oh gosh, this is unhealthy. This is bad. I shouldn't be feeling this way. I shouldn't, you know, or we can go down a lot of rabbit holes with that. But I think we are so narrow-minded sometimes in thinking that conflict equals not okay, not good, not healthy, not working, right? When all it is not working. Not
working, not connecting, not understanding. And conflict is healthy when it's used. Conflict is an opportunity. Conflict is an opportunity for people to come together, an opportunity to grow, and for other perspective to be had. But we do get, and this is the funny part about it, is we get so caught in our, these pillars that we hang on to. Like it's kind of like I drive a stake in the ground, right? So back in the day, if they were going to create property boundaries, they would drive a stake in the ground, and then everything gets measured out from there. So if you think about a city, they're usually a city center. It usually starts with a stake in the ground, and then everything's drawn off of that one post. And I think sometimes we get so rooted in that post and we hang on to that post so tightly, and another person is hanging on to their post so tightly that neither one of us are willing to meet in the middle. Neither one of us are willing to move off of that position. But we hang on to things to justify or to validate that post. And sometimes I see it in traditions. Mm-hmm. I see it in religious belief systems. Yes. I see it in familial belief systems. I see it in all sorts of, well, this is
political arena.
Yeah,
We're
political.
Heading into it hard.
Oh my
here,
gosh.
Election year.
Yes, and I see it on all these different levels where people will hang on to it and go, well, this is how this party believes. Well, this is how this party believes, and here's who's right, and here's who's right, and here's who's wrong. And so that really is kind of that perspective piece that I wanted to touch on. Mm-hmm. But here's my theory. Are you ready for my theory?
I'm ready. Oh, man.
So here's my theory.
I'm really ready.
And again, people, it's a theory. But as we have developed as human beings, we have to remember where we came from. Our ancestors, they fought tooth and nail for what we had. Mm-hmm. And conflict was very clear back in the day. It was either you were a person of peace, or you were trying to take from other people what they had. One of the reasons that we wave as human beings, which we don't realize, but the reason we wave is that was a sign of I have no weapons in my hands. The reason we shake hands is to also the same thing. We're showing I have no weaponry. My hands are here.
I'm friendly.
I'm friendly.
I'm open. I'm at peace.
Because that was very simple. Conflict was very cut and dry back in the day. Mm-hmm. It was either we're going to get along fine, or we're going to battle it out. Mm-hmm. And nowadays, as we've grown, we still have that instinctual thing inside of us, but we don't necessarily fight anymore. We don't necessarily go to dukes. We don't necessarily go to war with each other on a physical level.
Right.
But now it's an emotional war.
Oh, and mental.
And a mental war. And so we're still caught in that nuance of I don't want conflict because it's going to force me to be aggressive. It's going to force me to be uncomfortable. And I only know all or nothing.
Right.
I only know I'm going to go through you to get what I want, or I'm going to lay down and let you walk all over me. And there's no in between. Mm-hmm.
Which is not true.
Which is totally not true.
There's lots of layers in between that.
But it creates a lot of conflict,
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, that creates a lot of conflict within ourselves, which really causes us to not speak out, to not open our hearts, to not say the things that we need to say. So I see this a lot with parents and parenting, where a parent won't confront a child because, oh my gosh, if I confront that child, this could turn into a big blow up and a big blowout.
And I may never see them again.
And they may hurt themselves, or I may never see them again, or I don't want to deal with it. And so what do? We just kind of like, oh, all right, and we leave it alone.
Yeah, enable and avoid.
Yep.
Absolutely. So
that's my theory.
Well, that's a good one. So let's get some tools. So I'm looking at our sticky notes. So we've got the perspective, which we've already talked about.
Yes.
This is one thing that creates conflict.
Yes.
And the next one that we have listed down is the story.
Yep.
Help me understand that.
So there's a story that you tell yourself every day. And you get up in the morning and you walk through this. And this is well-known information. It's out there everywhere. A lot of literature that's able to support and help you understand. So please read. And if you need suggestions on reading, let us know.
Yeah, we got lots of them.
But we tell ourselves a story. We tell ourselves a story about who we are every day. We tell ourselves a story about what's true and what's not true. We tell ourselves a story about why we're safe and why we're not safe. And here's what's done to me, and this is what's been done to me, and how I have to protect myself and how I have to insulate myself. Mm-hmm. And it's really intriguing because I'll see couples, for example, they'll come in and they'll sit down and they're in conflict. And they're in the unhealthy side of conflict, where they're either warring or they're just doormatting. Mm-hmm. And they're either doing one of the two. There's no resolution. There's no coming together.
There's no growth.
No growth.
Yeah.
But a lot of it comes from the stories that they tell themselves. One person is telling the story of I always get hurt. This always happens to me. I always have these people in my life. Why do I attract these types of people? And then you have another person that's laying down, that's laying down and going, well, I just have to give in. I have to give up. And I don't want these things to happen in my life. I don't want people to leave me. I don't want this. And then we also have the warring where it's like, well, if I don't stand up for myself, I'll never get my way. And people are always walking all over me. And we're going through all these stories in our head that have nothing to do with what's happening right now.
Right. Staying in the present,
right.
Being in the here and now. And I also think an additional piece to this story is oftentimes, especially with those that we're closest to, I think we do this I think a lot of people do. I do this a lot, right? But I think a lot of people struggle with this anyway. But it's also the story that we create in our mind about what the other person is thinking, right? Yeah. Or what their perspective is, or what their expectations are, right? And then we create this whole monster in our head. And so speaking of books, Brene Brown talks about this a lot in her, I think it's Taming the Wilderness one, Braving the Wilderness,
the Wilderness, yeah.
Where she's all up in her head about this experience with her husband and creating this giant thing. And then it's boom, she just drops the bomb and goes to war over this thing. And he's like, yeah, no, I wasn't even thinking that.
I wasn't even there.
Right. And so the agreement that they made is that when she starts to do that, the runaway train in her brain, right?
Yep.
She comes and tells him all right, so the story that I'm telling myself is da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Is this correct?
Yes.
Right? And then they can have a conversation. And if conflict arises, then it does. But I think that's also a big piece in this story bit,
huge
right?
Piece, a very big piece. And I'm grateful that you pointed it out that way. And Brene is such a great tool for people, great resource. Braving the Wilderness, the power of vulnerability, so many of her great pieces of literature that I would encourage everybody to participate in.
Yeah, such great insight about all of that.
Yes.
Especially guilt and shame.
Yes. So I'm going to jump to this last one.
Love it, please do.
Due to the sake of time. The need to be right. And we really created this belief system within ourselves that we're afraid of being wrong. Being wrong makes you weak, vulnerable, not good enough, not wanted, not valuable, not important, all these things. And that's not necessarily true. Being right doesn't solve those things. Being right doesn't make you more lovable. It doesn't make you more beautiful. It doesn't make you more attractive or more successful. Being right never has solved that for anybody. But for some reason, we think that if I'm right, I don't have to suffer. If I'm right, I don't have to be embarrassed or struggle. So we will defend being right even when we know we're off. Even when we know. And that's the most amazing thing is I can sit and watch a couple losing each other, destroying each other as they're working. And of course, I'm always intervening before it gets ugly. But I'm watching this happen all because they want to be right. They've lost sense of valuing the relationship. They've lost sense of loving. They've lost sense of caring. I'm going to be right. And even if that destroys us, even if that destroys everything we worked for, I'm going to be right.
Right.
And like you said, a lot of that right is proving the story in my head is true.
Yes.
And I've seen that happen. I've seen partners begging and pleading the other partner, and the other partner just standing their ground. It's scary.
Right. And I think, Dean, we're kind of talking about, and it comes into your different personalities almost even, right? So if you have a hard time with conflict because you don't want to bring anything up, because you don't want it to be this aggressive experience, then you probably tend to be a little bit more chill, passive kind of person. And then on the other end of things, this whole really people that are in conflict a lot, right? They're just constantly picking fights a lot. It stems from that need to be right.
Absolutely. That fear of being wrong, we fear that by being wrong, and that's why we have to move away from that belief system, but the fear of being wrong somehow lessens who I am. And we've got to move away from that. And we really have to start focusing on being, in this healthy and unhealthy, or this working and not working mentality. We're hearing a lot more. 22 years ago, this was content that I was teaching in seminars and workshops. It was very new and fresh for a lot of people. Now we're seeing it showing up in a lot of our work and literature and a lot of that information. And we need it. We need people to start recognizing that it's beyond right or wrong. And the way that we do that is we have to really get tied into what we're trying to create.
Yes.
And does this being right support what I'm trying to create, or does it take away from what I'm trying to create?
Absolutely. And letting go of if I am wrong, then that means that I am worthless. Nobody loves me. I've got no value.
Right.
Instead of like, okay, awesome. Now I can shift and grow because that wasn't working for me.
Yeah.
So we've got the keys are to stay open, right? It's okay if your perspective gets shifted. It's all right if someone gives you more information and you grow. Oh gosh, heaven forbid that happened, right?
Forbid.
And we open and we grow. And check that story. Like see if it's just part of that old routine, if you're creating something that isn't even real in your mind.
Yep.
And then let go of that need to be right all of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Such great.
So go out there and get in conflict with somebody and test your new skills.
Test it. Well, thank you everybody for chiming in. Hello, CJ. Hello, Mike. Hello, Todd.
We got to Todd commented, it's too late. I needed to hear this 4 years ago, but y'all still rock. Todd, you ain't dead yet, bro.
Yeah.
It's not too late.
Never
to start
too late.
to get good at these
Never
skills.
Too late.
Never too late.
Always things. And I know that sometimes a lot of you watching have been through rough times in relationships.
Yes.
And so, again, that's the story that we tell is, you know, maybe there's been some rockiness. Maybe a relationship has not, you know, gone on. Maybe it's come to a close or whatever that may be. The reality is there's a whole life ahead of us that we can experience and move these things forward on. So
and
I really
love how you're always
telling,
especially when it comes to children, but I think this applies to everybody in our life, that people are more affected by the changes that you make than by the consistencies that you keep.
Yep.
So grow, change, improve, and it's going to affect everybody in your world.
Absolutely. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. You guys are awesome. Thank you, Kate Semmens, the great Kate Semmens.
Thanks, Dane.
Always doing a great job, and thank you, Jamie, out there. These girls, find them, support them, and men out there, let's support these women. Let's get behind them and help them. So thank you everybody for tuning in. Like and share our videos, and most importantly,
we'll see you next week.
And talk about them.
Oh yeah, the water cooler. Sorry. I'm like, I don't know what's most important.
And we'll see you all next week on Monday Night Live.
Bye, guys.
Goodbye.